Good evening, folks. Your town council would like to welcome you to the regular town council meeting of Tuesday, October 6th, 2020. Call the meeting to order at 6:30 p.m. Ask you all to rise. Join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
For the roll, please.
Town Manager Mead.
Present.
Councillor Chusigid.
Here.
Councillor O'Neill.
Here.
Councillor Kelly.
Here.
Councillor Blow.
Here.
Very good, thank you. Council, are there any adjustments to tonight's agenda? I have before me two emergency items. First item, discussion with action to accept the bid from Beaverbrook Tales LLC for court improvements to the Atlantic Avenue Park and to authorize the town manager to enter into a contract in the amount not to exceed $35,481, funded by the CDBG Community Enterprise Grant from account number 30413-50735. CDBG Community Enterprise Grant expense account with a balance of $95,000. This item would become agenda item number 7302. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, council. Motion has been made in second. There's no further discussion. And none opposed. That motion will carry 4-0. And the second emergency agenda item this evening is discussion with action to accept the bid from Robillard Brothers Landscaping for park improvements to the Atlantic Avenue Court and to authorize the town manager to enter into a contract in the amount not to exceed $53,200, funded by the CDBG Community Enterprise Grant from account number 30413-50735, CDBG Community Enterprise Grant expense account with a balance of $95,000. Making this, thank you.
Second.
And just for further discussion, this agenda item will become 7303. Motion has been made in second. If there's no further discussion and none opposed, that motion carries 4-0 as well. Thank you, council. Do good and welfare this evening. Members of the public from good and welfare?
Oh dear.
Please, Fran, all set? Okay. Gentlemen? Good evening, sir, and welcome.
Good.
You may please, yes,
Oh,
so
good.
we can better hear
Thank
you,
you.
better see you, and you better see us as well. So thank you for that, and thank you for attending this evening.
Thank you very much. So, on behalf of the Maine Town and City Managers Association, my name is Andrew Hart. I am the president currently for the next 23 days. And with me tonight is Perry Ellsworth. He's a past president for the Maine Town and City Managers Association. During my day job, I'm the county administrator in Knox County in Rockland, Maine. So I've traveled here tonight for a special award to be presented. And how I'd like to start with is it's my privilege and honor to present the 2020 Distinguished Service Award. This award is given each year to one or more managers or assistant managers who will soon be retired or has recently retired in recognition of their distinguished career in local government management. It recognizes managers whose service to his or her communities has been judged as strong and exceptional, and who has made major contributions beyond direct service to local government. I'd like to ask this recipient to please come forward as we recognize his achievements. Larry Mead, would you please come forward? So I'm going to make you stand here for a little bit, if you don't mind. So I'd like to just give a little bit of background, and then I'd like to read some comments as well, some folks that I've spoke to in Old Orchard Beach. Larry has spent a total of 41 years working in municipal government, starting with the city of Portland in 1979, holding several positions over his 27 years there in health and human services, and also as the assistant city manager. In 2006, Larry was selected as the town manager for Kennebunkport and is finishing his career with the town of Old Orchard Beach in a position he's held since 2013. To recognize Larry's manager contributions, I want to read a few comments that were provided to me about Larry from individuals in Old Orchard Beach. From Louise Reed, the assistant town manager for Old Orchard Beach. I knew immediately that Larry was a gifted manager of people. Those of us who work with him find him forthright and fair, enormously motivated and supremely knowledgeable in all aspects of municipal government. I have watched and learned from his example as his interpersonal skills extend to all levels of the organization. Larry's personal nature expounds to the highest level of ethical behavior, but at the same time, approachable to all levels of the community. He is a motivator and has a creative and enthusiastic approach to management of staff, and under his leadership, I personally have grown both in knowledge but in compassion to all levels in which we serve. From Fred Lamontagne, the Old Orchard Beach Fire Chief. So this is a little different than the first one I read, and then the next couple I'm going to read. I joined Larry at a neighborhood meeting. Upon arrival, I found Larry swinging a hula hoop on his hips with other adults, and I'd like to have seen this, in the front parking lot of a vacant restaurant. He was laughing, smiling, and conversing with the children and adults nearby. Later, as we walked through the crowd, I came to realize that this was his home, not in the physical sense, but in the professional sense. Larry has found his calling as a town manager. He is a grassroots, hardworking, and energetic leader. It was also very clear that this was Larry's town. He knew almost everyone by first name, and more importantly, as he introduced me, I get a sense that I was meeting his family. Larry's remarks invoke passion, smiles, and most of all, belief, not that the town would create this community, but the residents would create this community with his humble assistance. From the Old Orchard Beach Council. Almost 6 years ago, Larry Mead took the helm as Old Orchard Beach's new town manager, on the heels of a town council vote that put 6 new councilors into elected office out of the 7 seats. In addition, there had been almost as many new town managers over a period of almost 10 years. There had almost been as many new town managers over a period of almost 10 years. The trust factor among staff, businesses, and residents was an all-time low, and Old Orchard Beach was poised for change. A much-needed change. After several years of turmoil with council chambers filled with disgruntled community members and the community of Old Orchard Beach weekly fodder for the local and regional newspapers, it was time. Time for positive and authentic leadership. It was evident early on the right decision had been made, that Larry was here to stay. No turning back. As a resident of Old Orchard Beach, Larry had a vested and genuine interest in all the affairs of the town. A man of his word, of utmost integrity, he quickly and adaptedly gained the trust of the community's residents, businesses, town council, and staff. Larry righted the ship, steered the town's course through its turbulent times and rocky waters and navigable waters. Larry had the professional leadership experience, the integrity, and the respect to turn the town around. He walked into a perfect storm and with grace and diplomacy worked collaboratively with the new town council, guiding us through this transition. As we chuckle among ourselves, we are not the best show on TV anymore. As the turmoil has shifted into a positive outcome, Larry is the epitome of a professionalism, integrity, and authentic leadership. We are all grateful to call him our town manager. From Patricia Brown, the Old Orchard Beach Community Friendly Connection Facilitator. As a 25-year resident who continually volunteers throughout the town, I've experienced all of many new town managers in Old Orchard Beach, 5 in just 7 years. Life and perception of our town has greatly improved since Larry was hired. I know this entire community agrees that Larry is an exceptional, highly ethical person and extremely talented town manager. He is held in high esteem throughout the town. His word is his bond, and his passion for community is unsurpassed. And last but not least, from Fran Bollier, Human Resource Manager at Old Orchard Beach. When I applied for my current position, getting the call to meet with Larry was nerve-wracking, but he just smiled and offered me the job. I knew I had a lot to learn, and I didn't want to let him down. Larry's the type of person who has faith in his staff and makes you want to rise and exceed his expectations. It was his calm and steady approach and guidance that kept me sane, and every one of our many great conversations taught me a lesson. Larry epitomizes the Eleanor Roosevelt quote, "To handle yourself, use your head. To handle others, use your heart." So to sum up, and speaking personally, I've seen his skills, remarkable skills that he has in diplomacy and negotiations. He is highly regarded around the state by his colleagues and others that have had the pleasure to work with him. He is an inspiration to others and always been a supportive friend, a mentor, and a role model for exceptional municipal management. I'm grateful to have worked with him alongside for many years as a manager, as a fellow board member, and a fellow officer with MTCMA. Please join us in congratulating Larry Mead as a 2020 recipient of the Distinguished Service Award and wishing him well as he moves into his next phase of his life and retirement. So I would just like to read this. This says, Maine Town, City, and County Management Association Distinguished Service Award to Larry Mead for his long and distinguished career as Municipal Maine Manager, October 2020.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Congratulations.
Thank you. You caught me by surprise. That's great. Very cool.
Good. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you as well. I appreciate your time and your travel as well. Thank you. Well done.
Just want to thank Andy and Perry, Andy and both of you for coming tonight. It's been a pleasure working with you guys. Worked a lot together on Maine Town and City Managers Association business. And Perry and I have been fellow managers here in York County, so we've worked on a number of issues over the years. And it's been a real pleasure. And I want to thank the staff who made those humbling comments, except for Fred, whose comments weren't humbling. I'm glad he didn't see me with the unicycle that one day. That would have been too much. So, and thanks to my wife and my stepson, Seth, wife, Denise. When they came through the door, I knew I was in trouble. And Louise, your remarks are always so gracious and wonderful. And to hear you tell me that you learn things from me I really appreciate that because I learned a lot from you. I really did. Great. So I'm very grateful for the award, and I think my proudest accomplishment is working with this town council. Over the years, we've been together almost the entire time, 6 out of the 7 years, and I think we did right the ship together. The town was having some hard times. And it was time to do something different, and I think together we demonstrated that it could be done differently, and I thank you for your part in that. I thank the staff. I've had a really good time being town manager here in Old Orchard Beach, and when I came, and I've said this before, but Louise was at the police station as I was getting ready for my interview, and she came out to comfort me, I think, and she said, "Are you crazy applying for this job?" And I'm a little bit crazy that way, so, but it was a job that I knew I wanted to do. And Jay Kelly, Councilor Kelly, had come up to me. We live in the same neighborhood, and he'd stopped by, and I hadn't turned in my application yet and hadn't definitely decided, and Councilor Kelly gave me a pep talk and said, "Get that application in there." And I did, and it's been a delight. So I'm going to continue to be here as a resident with my wife, and her daughter, my stepdaughter, and her husband are here living in Old Orchard Beach for the past year now, and we have a new grandbaby, so we're going to have a lot to do in this community, and I hope to be part of the civic life by giving my time in different capacities and being member of committees and boards. So thanks very much.
Well done, and thank you as well, Larry. Any other acknowledgements, council? I'd just like to take a moment and recognize the fire department for their remembrance of a fallen former call captain, Richard Blaney, whose memorial mass was just the other day. And the professionalism and the display of support from the fire department, even though the captain had been retired for several years, was phenomenal. I can't speak highly enough for the chief's efforts and the department's efforts. Just to go past the fire station and have them all salute with the equipment on the front patio was phenomenal. So, Chief, thank you for your efforts. It was very well done. The firefighters' last call was also done. So it was a moving ceremony and very heartfelt. So I thank you for that. It just goes to show, even though we're maybe retire, we're not forgotten. So thank you again, Chief, and thank you for all those who attended. It was a well represented festivity for sure. So if there's no further acknowledgements, to the acceptance of minutes. To accept the Town Council meeting minutes and the Council workshop of September 15th, 2020, and the Administrative Review Board minutes of September 17th and September 28th, 2020. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion has been made and second. If there's no further discussion, and none opposed, motion carries 4-0. To our public hearings, and Mr. Mead, I understand that the presentation will be for the first public hearing of the wastewater bond question, is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
So the first public hearing, the wastewater bond question number 1, shall the order number 20202 entitled Order to Authorize the Town of Old Orchard Beach to issue general obligation bonds in the principal amount not to exceed $23,500,000 to upgrade wastewater treatment facility equipment and systems be adopted. So we'll open that public hearing at 6:50. And folks, just so we can help people better understand everything that's going on with this request for your support for the bond, the presentation will give us a brief overview of what we're trying to tackle for improvements at the wastewater treatment facility. So with that being said, Mr. Mead.
Thank you, Chair. Appreciate it. So, trying to promote the need for a wastewater treatment expansion at $23.5 million. It's not the sexiest topic in the world, and so I think it's a tough one to get people to get enthusiastic about and say, yeah, we got to do that for this town. We've got to get that wastewater plant upgraded. But I really do think it's probably as important a component of our public infrastructure as any other that can be named. Without that wastewater treatment plant functioning properly and efficiently, the town will be in a significant amount of trouble, not just because of the potential for the inability for new development, because that's really not the most significant thing, but it's a reality. If the components are at capacity, then there can't be additional flow added to it. But more importantly, because if the plant is not functioning properly and if it's subject to breakdowns due to aged equipment, we could have a catastrophic discharge of wastewater into our sensitive watersheds. And in particular, this plant is located in the area that encompasses the Goose Fair Brook watershed. And so a discharge would go directly into the Goose Fair Brook and then from there into the beach waters offshore. And that is something that this town doesn't want to have happen, not just because of the fines that we would incur from the state, but more importantly because of the image that it would present to the people who want to live here and who want to come and visit here every summer. So it's really important that we take charge and address the issues at the plant. So why do it now? The plant is originally constructed in the 60s, and then they had a major expansion and the last primary upgrade in 1985. So what that means is you're looking at 35 to 50-year-old infrastructure for the great majority of the plant. And all of us who have homes that we're taking care of or properties we're taking care of know that if you get 30 years down the road and things haven't been replaced or upgraded, then you're going to be looking at breakdowns. That's just what happens. And it will happen, it does happen at our plant and happens now. There was a facilities report done in 2009 presented to the town. And at the time, it recommended that there be $30 million of investment in the plant and in the pump stations to bring it up to code and bring it up to the modern era. That 2009 coincided with the Great Recession here in the United States and around the world, actually. And it was a time of retrenchment, not a time of spending a lot of money, and the town had to cut staff from various departments, and it had to significantly reduce its capital expenditures. And that's lasted for a few years. When I came in 2013, we were on the rebound, but we were still council was still being very cautious with the expenditures that they were making, and our capital expenditures still had not gotten back up to where they needed to be. And so it was hard to do investments of this consequence at that time. But over the 7 years that I've been here, we have attempted to do investments on a smaller scale at the wastewater plant incrementally. And there's been several $1 million of investments in the plant with an eye on completing the work that had been outlined in the 2009 report. And then also getting to the point where when we were at a major upgrade, when we were there at the time when we had to go out to bond, we'd had some work behind us, so it wouldn't be as expensive as it had been. And that's where we are today. The $23.5 million is obviously a lot less than the 30 originally that was talked about. And that's a reflection of both the fact that we've done some work and also because we've really looked at this from the perspective of value engineering. We brought on Woodard & Curran Engineering to do a review of the master plan and to find savings where they could while still getting the plant work done that we needed. The facility deficiencies that we've had at the plant have resulted in some DEP violations, notice of violations, because of problems that resulted in some minor discharges in some cases, but brought to the attention of DEP that we were at that point where things needed to be improved. And in 2018, I received a letter from the Department of Environmental Protection giving me the intention that they were going to put the town under an administrative consent agreement immediately in order to outline what they believed needed to be done and a time frame for that work to be done at the plant and at the pump stations. I met with the people from DEP and told them about the incremental work that we'd been doing since 2014-15, and also that there was a plan going forward that we were working with our consultants to figure out what needed to be done and when it needed to be done. And the council was aware of this, had talked about it, and was looking forward to putting out a bond issue within a couple of years. So that's where we are today. The investment outcomes for doing the upgrade on the plant, first and foremost, it's going to be protecting our beach and Goose Fair Brook, because as I said, if we have discharges because of outdated equipment, that's going to be the affected water bodies. Secondly, we're going to replace outdated, undersized electrical infrastructure. It's currently hazardous, and it's very costly when we do have to repair it. And it's been kind of cobbled together over the years of the plant so that it doesn't make a logical sequence of how it was installed, and it wasn't always installed as they are today in conduit. And sometimes we don't even know where it is. You have to go hunting and pecking for it. So that's a really important piece that we have to do. We're going to improve the functionality and expand the capacity of several pump stations. We have 4 pump stations that are included in this bond issue. They really address the issues and needs on the northern side of town going towards Pine Point and out Portland Avenue towards Blue Point Road, that part of town. We are at this point in time at capacity with those pump stations. And so there's really no significant additional residential development that can take place until we repair those and take care of that. As I said, about 70% of the plant's mechanical equipment has exceeded its useful life in that 35 to 50-plus year category. And the result of that is that our crews, our staff, who are very, very talented at fixing things because that's what they do a lot, have to deal with disruptive breakdowns and system failures. And one of the things that we've found is replacement parts are getting really hard to find for a lot of what we have in place. And sometimes you just can't find them, and so you're replacing things kind of piecemeal, and it's very more expensive than it would be otherwise. And finally, we'd be installing interconnected communications system that is going to allow the various components of the plant to better be informing our staff how they're functioning and what's going on at any given moment in time. And they can do that remotely as well as having to be at the plant. Some of the problems we had occurred when our staff wasn't there. And so this is going to be something that will enable us to be aware of things as they develop. So one thing to bring to people's attention is nobody wants to borrow $23.5 million, but this is the time to borrow $23.5 million, both because of the need, but also because we have historically low interest rates, and we've already been approved through the state for a, I don't remember the term, but it's the loan program through the state DEP, which would be in the 1.5% range, perhaps a little lower than that. And you're not going to ever do better than that, let's face it, unless it's a grant. And so that's very important to us, and as a result of that good, favorable interest rate, the cost for our residents will be more affordable than it would have been 8 years ago when interest rates were, for us to borrow, were in the 4.5% range. It would have been much more expensive for us then, over time, and more expensive to our taxpayers in terms of their monthly and annual costs. So what this is going to mean is essentially about 55 cents on the tax rate, which translates into, for a $300,000 home, $14 a month or so, which is less than 50 cents a day, but $170 a year. No one wants to pay that, but that's a pretty good deal for what we're buying here, what we're getting. And for those who have properties, like many of our residents who live in mobile homes in Old Orchard Village, and their property values maybe are under $100,000, for them, the cost is going to be obviously much less than this. It may be as little as $5 a month or $4 a month if they're in the $80,000 range. So that's important too. And then finally, it has the unanimous support of our town council, who are recognizing that now is the time to do this. If we do not do this, we will be facing a consent decree from the state. And there are penalties. There'll be a timeline. Do this, this, and this by such and such a date. And if it doesn't happen, then the penalties do start to accumulate, and they are not insignificant. And I don't mean that as a threat. That's just a reality. That's what it is. So if this bond issue fails, we'll be coming back to the voters in the not-too-distant future with another proposal of some sort, because we're going to have to. So really makes sense to do it now. Interest rates are great, and we're ready and primed to do it. So I'm going to ask Brent Bridges from Wood & Kern to just give a quick overview of where in the plant and what's being done, so that our residents out there can see just what this investment is going to add up to. Pardon me? Oh, you can just use mine.
See it? If you go back 15 minutes ago, the things I'll add about Larry is he's a complete town manager. So I'm from British Wood & Kern, and so when you come and you talk, I have to do very little talking, because Larry really he has a great grasp of the entire situation, the entire plant, what the needs are, and so I'm just gonna do the pretty pictures as far as doing it. So what we have here is I have 4 slides, so I'll try to be relatively brief. I do think wastewater is sexy and good to talk about, but I'm an engineer, and so that's the way it works. And so what you see here is an aerial of the town with the beach down here. And so what we've got is we've got 8 pump stations in town: Ross Road, Portland Ave, Milliken, Comfort, East Grand, West Grand, and then 2 at Dungrass. And so in doing it, we looked at age, capacity, controls, codes, as far as what we need to upgrade. We didn't need to do everything. And when we looked at Ross Road, Portland, Milliken, and Comfort, they all flow into each other. And so when you're all at capacity, all of them need to be done all at once in order to improve that capacity. And so we looked and said, for all of those, redundancy, so generators, upgrades to all the pumps and equipment, so we've got more capacity and more ability to control all that flow, so growth can be handled, as well as the failures that we've had in the past, the call-ups, everything can be connected. So those 4 pump stations will be all upgraded as part of this. This is an overview of the plant. And so front entrance when you come in, the overall plant. One of the things that we looked at when we were looking at age, condition, code violations, maintaining your license, and capacity was to try to use all the existing infrastructure we could. And so one of the reasons it's $23.5 million and not 30 or 40 million is the only things we're trying to build new are in yellow. The new admin building that's in place and up and ready to go and will be moved in next month. The halfway pump station, a little addition onto the process building, and then a little bit of covers for chlorine tanks. And so everything else, we're using all the existing tanks in the ground to be able to improve all of the capacities and to be able to upgrade every piece of equipment. So what we're looking at here is everything. Larry talked about complete electrical upgrade. Things are 35 years old. It's hard to attach new pieces of equipment to something that's 35 years old. All new electrical infrastructure, all new instrumentation and controls, the communication system for the whole entire system, pump stations in the plant, and then looking at every element of the plant, upgrading all of the facilities, new equipment, new controls, and the total, all of that, when you're looking at everything on the plant, everything in the pump stations, is the $23.5 million. And that's not a construction number. That's a construction, design, financing, everything all included. And so we try to be very efficient as far as putting everything together. So that's, So that's, in general, what we're talking about, the infrastructure, the pump stations, and everything at the plant. Questions?
Very good. Thank you for that. So with that, folks, first, to begin the public session of this, I'd first like to thank you all for respecting the safety acknowledgement of the wearing of the masks. It's a difficult time for all of us. It's difficult to hear when people speak with the masks on. So if you wish to speak, to come to the podium, state your name for us. You may remove your mask so we can hear you, the folks at home can hear you. And then upon returning to your seat, put the mask back on. We'd greatly appreciate that. So if you would, we'll open up to members of the public. Good evening.
Hi, Louise Reed. I came as a resident of Old Orchard Beach and having conversations with some of my neighbors on this issue. It's a critical need for the upgrade and improvement to this 42-year-old facility. I received, when I was the assistant town manager, I received numerous calls from people concerned about the violations that have been directed by the Department of Environmental Protection. Former town managers, 5 that I had before Larry, have addressed the issue and it's gone by the board. Larry has taken this on as a real project, and the enormous responsibility of moving this forward is his intent. It was built in 1960, it was expanded in 1980. It's now 70% of the system has exceeded its useful life. And I think that the town manager and the superintendent of wastewater are bringing this to the town's residents' attention. The electrical system is outdated. It lacks proper communication system, and there's issues about adding new users. So I encourage voters to go to the polls and vote yes on this bond issue. Thank you.
Thank you.
Paul Goldsmine, 116 Ross Road. I'm all for this nice presentation. I don't believe the cost is going to be that bad to the citizens for what you showed us. I do know it's outdated, I've been told. In the event that the bond doesn't go through, how do we pay for it?
Pardon me?
In the event the bond doesn't go through, how do we pay for it?
Well, we wouldn't pay for it because we wouldn't be doing any improvements without voter approval.
Right.
Everything over $500,000, the voters have to approve. Okay. And so anything significant, we'd be asking voters.
Well, I urge everybody at home to vote for this because it's well needed.
Thank you, Paul.
Hi, Robin Dewey. Similar question to Paul. If this doesn't go through, have you already put up those new buildings down there that planning board
No,
approved and
there's-
all of that?
The only building that was put up was the administration building, and that's not occupied yet. It's essentially 95% done.
He just
Yeah,
said it's
yeah.
to be moved into
That's already
next
been
month.
paid for. That was already approved by voters previously, that investment. And the reason that we did the administration building first was because it's located now in the same building that has a primary pump
I know,
station.
I know where all this is.
So in order to get to that pump station and get that repaired, we had to get the admin building.
So why are we approving those buildings again when they've already been approved through
Different.
not?
It's different, Robin. It's a different building.
Okay.
Yep.
Oh, no, there's no,
Like-
that building
like
is, that's
Paul's-
not part of the bond issue.
Like Paul just said, if this doesn't go through, and I'm hoping it does, I am for it too, but how are you gonna pay for those buildings that are already under construction?
That's already, the one that's already under construction is already paid for. The voters already approved that.
So do we not take that out of the 23 million that you're
It's
looking for?
not part of the 23
It-
million.
Okay, well, he just said all
No,
of this was
yeah,
part
yeah,
of the.
Yeah, no, he just pointed
deal.
that it's a new building, but it's
Thank-
not part of that. Sorry, Robin, yep.
Thanks for clarifying that for us. Good evening, sir.
Hi, Guy Fontaine, live in halfway section. Actually, I just got some questions, wondering if that consent agreement could be made public, if we could get copies of that so that we could see what the state was complaining about, per se. Two, if we're going to replace or upgrade 4 pump stations, I assume with larger pumps to be more capacity, will the infrastructure that's in the ground, the pipes that are there now, will they be able to handle the capacity of increased flow? Or is that something that we're gonna have to go back in and enlarge those pipes? Or were they built to the capacity of the pumps that are there now? So that's, I guess it would be a question for the engineer. That's-
I can address that question. As part of the upgrade for the Milliken Street pump station, we would also be replacing, I think it's about 1,000 feet, I can't remember exactly, of sewer line on Walnut so that it is upgraded a little bit bigger to be able to handle that capacity. The rest of the lines going through there they're not the issue, it's the pump stations.
Okay. Sure.
New construction, when new construction goes on in this town and the developers are putting in all these other houses, they are contributing already to the town to be able to hook to those pump stations. So there is an input of money that does come in.
That's right.
From that type of construction. So, you know, people think that, oh, they're all building and we're not getting nothing out of it, but we are. you
Correct.
know.
That's right. Yep. It's $3,500 per unit for connection fee. Yeah.
Thank you, Rob. Any further comments, folks? Please. Good evening, sir.
Hello, I'm Scott Tucker from Ocean Park, and I was wondering if anyone knew the difference in cost between the work that we're intending to do and the work that must be done in order to keep up with the DEP and have a safe running water treatment plant. Because we're increasing the capacity, and there must be a cost to that increase. Does anyone know what that cost is?
Well, actually, the capacity increase is really only in the pump stations, not at the plant. The plant's capacity is pretty good, but it's the pump station capacity. It's really more at the plant. It's more to address those outdated infrastructure that is at the point of
It's ready, I'm sure.
It is, yeah. That's really what it is, but thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Additional comments or questions, folks? Comments or questions from council? We'll close the public hearing at 7:13. Thank you for that, folks.
Through the chair.
Yes.
So we received notice, we're controlling access to the room because of COVID and capacity. So we have 8 people who do want to speak about question 2 in the public hearing. So for those who are here who are not needing to speak about question 2, I would ask if you are able to leave, that's great. After that public hearing, you may be able to come back if you need to do that. So, and if you do speak on the public hearing, if we're still at capacity, then we'd ask you to leave so that someone else could come up and speak. If you need to come back in, we can accommodate that later.
Good evening, sir.
You have to cue this up and read the thing.
So we'll open the second public hearing, adult use marijuana, question number 2. Shall the town council adopt an ordinance allowing the sale of adult use marijuana and the issuance of a limited number of licenses allowing adult use marijuana retail stores to operate? We'll open that public hearing at 7:15.
Through the chair. Should we wait till
We can
whoever
allow people
comes
to
up?
start. Well, so they don't repeat themselves, but we'll allow everybody to speak anyway if they want to speak towards it.
Yeah, but they may want to hear something that somebody might have to say.
Okay, yeah. Let's do that first. Good point, Jay. Yeah, we'll just give us 1 second. We'll allow the exchange of folks to take place, and we'll move forward. Thanks for your patience.
There's nobody else.
Are you checking the status on that, Mr. Mead? Is that what you're? Yeah, come on in. So thank you, gentlemen, for your patience in waiting outside for this public hearing. So just to restate some of the ground rules. If you wish to speak to the public hearing, number 1, we appreciate your cooperation with the use of the mask while you're seated. But you may remove the mask when you approach the podium so we can better understand and hear you, not only here, but at home as well, okay? So again, thank you for your patience and your cooperation with the use of the mask as we deal with this COVID situation. And with that, we'll open the comments to Mr. Jerome.
Through the chair, thank you, and welcome back to three-dimensional presence at a town council meetings. Jerome Beggart, Gables Way. I haven't, even before the pandemic, you hadn't seen me for a few years. I've been giving you a breather. I didn't come with the prepared statement, but since I've spoken at length 2.5 times on this before since 2016, and I'll just let it bubble out from what I remember. A lot of people think that when you allow and start up marijuana retail and the other factors of the industry in a town, it means more tax revenue. And this issue, to a great extent, is about money, but not incoming, but outgoing. The state regulators that wrote Maine's marijuana law embedded into it a prohibition against a local option sales tax specific to marijuana business income. And so there is no added money coming into our tax base from the sales. We'll still be relying on the largesse of the state government to send what is state law. In state law is 5.5% of sales taxes, and we generate a boatload of sales taxes here, but they've almost never sent back 5% of sales tax and other taxes, and during the prolonged, ongoing repercussions of the pandemic impact on the economy, the state's not going to be getting that much revenue to send back to us anyways through the sales tax. So where is that money going to be coming from? And what does it have to pay for? The first thing that hits me, and I've said this before, is we don't just have 8,000 plus residents, some of whom want to smoke or swallow marijuana products. We have 30,000 extra people in our town from away between Memorial Day and Labor Day. And there will be behavioral repercussions that cost us. First and foremost is there will be impaired driving, especially if it's combined with consumption of alcohol. Some towns plan to train 1 or 2 officers to learn the state-of-the-art for roadside sobriety tests specific to marijuana. I insist, because of our population capacity of people from away in the summer, that every single police officer in Old Orchard get that training, which costs money. And when the state-of-the-art from the scientific community improves that testing, that they go through the new testing, so that every single one of them, when available and on duty, can do that testing. We'll need to make sure that there's police officer capacity to hopefully guarantee there is no diversion of product to our youth. The town of Old Orchard Beach, the taxpayers, the property taxpayers, pay 50% of the welfare costs. The other 50% comes from the state. That's going to increase when you have more unemployable people who become some percentage of new consumers or accelerated consumers will become unemployable because of addiction. We'll need to train all of our code enforcement officers for industry-specific inspection routines as regards the regular inspections they're going to have to do for these businesses. You noticed I haven't said, no, please don't do this, the sky is falling. It's best to take a practical approach, and besides, you've already sent this to officially to become a referendum question anyways. There are, there's probably more that I'm forgetting as far as costs upon us. The other one that is not so much one you will have to pay for through taxes or what I'm about to suggest. It's just something, I don't know if you remember back when John Glass was the fire chief, he explained once that if we don't have enough fire hydrants in town, the home insurance industry charges people more for fire insurance because there's not enough fire hydrants. The same applies to the Insurance Institute of America as regarding car insurance. States that have legalized recreational marijuana and towns that okay marijuana businesses have their, without any public declaration, have their car insurance rates increased. So beware of what you wish for.
Okay, Jerome, and I don't mean to be crass by any means, because it's council's rules and orders that we allow a 5-minute per person opportunity to speak.
We've gotten to the quick conclusion.
Yes, perfect.
So where does the money come from? Since it's not going to come from a local option sales tax, and during the pandemic, economic impact is not going to come from the state, you have to research and format all of the associated costs and build that into the business license. The math has to come equal. You have to be able to pay for the ramifications.
Perfect.
And beware what you wish for.
Perfect. Thank you. Good evening, Chief.
Council, as painful as this is, I agree with absolutely everything he said. That was pretty much what my comments were going to be centered on here this evening. Obviously, from my perspective, I oppose this ordinance for pretty much the same reasons that Jerome discussed earlier. I think we all know, those of us that have grown up here and lived here all our lives know that we, during the summer months especially, have a significant issue with alcohol abuse, drug abuse, and all of the things that go with that. And Jerome's comments about the impaired driving are absolutely spot on. That there is no testing available right now for marijuana when it comes like we do for alcohol. So I'm just not sure why we need this. I don't know what's in it for us, what's in it for the town of Old Orchard Beach to have these retail stores. And if there's something that I'm not aware of that is a benefit, then that's another story. But from my perspective, from a public safety point of view, in my personal opinion, it's not something that we need. So, thank you.
Very good. Thank you as well, Chief. Any additional comments, folks? Good evening, sir.
Good evening. My name is Tom Morris, 30 Saco Avenue. I'd like to start by congratulating Larry for your years of hard work here in Old Orchard Beach. I'm going to make it quick. Pretty much it's mostly just I'm asking for clarity around the referendum, and I'm just a little confused on the binding versus non-binding. I guess if this does get voted in, what would that timeline look like? And how would this look with the new, I guess, council members coming on? So just what would that process entail, and what would this look like if it does or does not pass? And then just to follow up on the previous two comments, marijuana is already in this town. There's delivery services that sell to whoever. So I think it's just better to get ahead of it, regulate it. I'm glad we're finally having these conversations, but it's going to be an Old Orchard regulated someday. Hopefully we can get in front of it and control it. Thanks.
So the answer to some of your questions as far as the timeline in relation to the new council and the binding and non-binding. So a binding referendum is if the public supports this and approves it, the positive, it binds the council, whoever it is, the new council, the sitting council, to move that forward through the public hearing process, the creation of the ordinance, the workshops, to create the actual ordinance. So it depends on the outcome of the vote as to how it proceeds, basically, is where we go from here. Okay? Good evening, sir.
Good evening. My name is William Ryan. I'm here on behalf of my friend Mike, who's a business owner in your town. I operate I owned my own medical cannabis company for 3 years, and I now operate a company out of Scarborough. And we are interested in your town as a hosting community. We think that we do bring money, security, and foot traffic, proven foot traffic. Some of the comments that we heard earlier around driving are interesting. I think that we actually see a decrease in alcohol consumption in towns that have recreational marijuana. You see a larger amount of distance traveled from people that are in towns from Prohibition to go outside of the town and purchase marijuana and return back. As is stated earlier, we have delivery companies already operating in the vicinity. I myself operate a delivery company. And it actually gives me a unique insight into the type of traffic and the type of consumers that we have here in your municipality. One of the things we see, Canadians, they call constantly, and we have to tell them no, because they don't have a medical certificate. People that are out of state, Massachusetts, for many years, great customers right here. But recently, because they have kind of squashed their medical program, we see people come up and expect retail sales. It's not an option for us currently. That foot traffic, those sales, they go out of this town. They go somewhere else. It's not necessarily a competition for that sale, but there are sales attached to it. And the foot traffic that it brings in is real. There are anecdotal things about this. you see generally niched areas be where you would shove a retail shop, areas that are maybe off the beaten path from business currently because you're trying to keep a front-facing thing going here, and that can be useful. It could be detrimental to some of the businesses, but we're willing to show our value here. You know, we're willing to come in and work where we're willing to work or allowed to work, and show you that driving foot traffic to the outer banks of your town here, especially in this waterfront. For 7 years, I've been coming here with my family, and I love vacationing here. We set up right down by the nets and enjoy the live music. And I've seen, the farther I park out and walk in after dropping off the kids, it's like it's shrinking. There's a difference now. It seems like we're more of a central community, and the business and everything happens closer in. We want to be part of changing that. We want to expand you. We want to reach you all the way out to Pine Point. We want people to be driven to come down there and to purchase something that they get at their home states regularly. And if they're not getting it here, it does take away from relaxation. And in a future that we don't know what alcohol in large group consumption looks like, you're going to see people utilizing their cottages to sit outside, consume an edible, and relax with family. Without it, we kind of drive some of those consumers away. Crime is actually decreased. I know we have a lot of seasonal businesses here. We're not intending to be a seasonal business. We want to be here. We want to be here all the time. We want our lights to be on outside. We want our cameras there. We want security to be there. We want people to feel safe coming to shop with us. It's part of that experience, that private, consumer experience for us. Additionally, we actually see this. In 2019, the Regional Science and Urban Economy, they did a investigation of this, and we're about 8,000. You said you swell to 30,000 extra people. Well, per 10,000 people, you can expect about 17 crimes per week less. That's about 19% overall. It's a large decrease. The idea that people are on welfare because of marijuana, I'm not gonna get into the trenches on that. I think that there's a lot of people, including myself, that utilize marijuana as a medical treatment or as an unwinding treatment. It's very stressful dealing with these types of meetings. It helps me immensely. It helped me immensely as I transitioned out of the military, and I know that we have a lot of veterans here in Maine. A lot of them are my customers. They work with us because we're a veteran-owned business. We intend to continue that and reach out into those communities. My last thing that I would put out is that 78% of sales are illegal. We got to get ahead of that. My colleague said the same thing. 78% are illegal. We should be capitalizing on that. It's an affront to me, and it should be an affront to everyone here. Anyone who's a real business owner, anyone who's in law enforcement, they should feel kind of an extra burden for that. We intend to relieve that burden by offering competitive prices, good customer service, explaining what medicines are going to work for who, and getting our names out there in a responsible way. Additionally, inspections are done here in the state of Maine by the Office of Marijuana Policy. They are done by the state, so there shouldn't be any additional need to train police officers to specifically inspect grows. In fact, it would be likely bad for both parties involved. You don't want police officers walking around smelling like marijuana from coming through a grow, and you probably don't want a police officer to come into a grow and potentially bring outside pathogens into it. That concludes my statements. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you as well. Appreciate it, Lam.
You guys know I'm all for this. I can't agree with this guy any more than what he said. I couldn't tell you how many people step foot on my pier and want to know where can they get marijuana, and they leave this town and go get it somewhere else. Now that means maybe they went to Portland, had dinner there, picked up their marijuana there. Guess what? They didn't eat dinner at one of my restaurants. Revenue out of my pocket. I pay a lot of taxes here, just like a lot of everybody else does. This isn't heroin. This is marijuana. This is here to stay. It's legal. This town should capitalize on it. You can get a lot of revenue. I disagree with this gentleman here on the revenue part. You can get a lot of revenue on a license. A lot of revenue on a license, as you know. Look what Portland has done. Okay? We need new money here in this town. We need new money. You know, we get $23.5 million sewer. If it doesn't go through this thing, we need to pay for it. We need that sewer plant. We need new money. This is new money, all right? You guys looking to find new money? Play the mega bucks. We'll do this.
Thank you, Paul. Any additional comments, folks? Having none, comments from council? Oh, okay. So do you wish to speak to this marijuana referendum question, please? Yep, please come up, state your name if you would. Good timing, glad you were able to make it.
Yeah.
If you would just state your name for the record for us.
Yes, Brandon Albert. I am the founder of Vetted Cannabis down in Sanford. I'm also been a local homeowner here since 2015. Let's see. So I know many towns in the state, they've elected not to allow retail stores in their town or allow cultivation of cannabis at all. What I do know for certain, sorry, I just walked here. What I do know for certain is that whether or not the town votes to allow it, people are still going to purchase and consume cannabis. The only difference is whether or not the town decides it's going to make money on it and allow the local business owners and their employees to do the same. If we don't allow it in Old Orchard Beach, they're just going to purchase it out of town or they're going to do it in the black market. Tourists coming from out of state, they're going to purchase in their own state instead of here if they know they can't get it when they arrive for their vacation. I understand that there's been a negative stigma attached to the cannabis industry, but this is not old school marijuana. Many of the cannabis businesses today run extremely clean, professional operations, some with on-site medical professionals, such as my own. They're run by intelligent, driven individuals with higher level education. These are good people looking not only to make a good living for themselves, but to create jobs, give back to their local communities, charities, and provide medicine for those who need it for medicinal purposes. Of course, most people buy cannabis for recreational use. In Old Orchard Beach, we know better than anyone that people like to get out and have fun. And we know how to capitalize on that. We must capitalize on an industry that is projected to hit $75 billion by the year 2030. We must capitalize on an industry that is the #2 highest selling product in the state and will eventually become #1. We have to adapt to the changing needs of our young adults that are drinking less and consuming more cannabis. According to CDC data, binge drinking is down 13% in states that have legalized cannabis, and the rate of first use cannabis by adults increases as binge drinking declined. Growth in alcohol sales will be slow or flat, and cannabis sales are rapidly increasing. We have to be prepared to take advantage of this market. And I'm one of the locals that are hopeful I will be able to set down roots for my business here in my own town rather than be forced to do so elsewhere. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Well done. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Okay. There's no additional public comment. Once again, last call for additional public comment. Comments from council? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing at 7:37. Thank you, folks, for attending, and thank you for your cooperation. If you're not wishing to speak to the next public hearings,
Mr. Chairman, thank you for the opportunity.
thank you as well. Thank you for your cooperation, folks. So as they're preparing our presentation for the next public hearing, I'll just go ahead, it's a formality. Public hearing number 3, contract zoning agreement. To approve a contract zone agreement between the Zanton Company and the town of Old Orchard Beach, map 205, block 1, lot 41, in the general business 1, residential 1, and historic overlay districts pursuant to 30A MRSA, section 4352, subsection 8, and chapter 78, Article 9 of the Old Orchard Beach zoning ordinance, and to amend the most recently adopted Town of Orchard Beach general zoning map to adopt the Contract Zone 2 district on the property identified as map 205, Block 1, Lot 41. With that being read, we'll open that public hearing at 7:38. Good evening and welcome.
Good evening,
Nice to
Mr.
see you
Chairman
again. Yeah.
O'Neill. Councilor Tousignant, Councilor Kelly, Councilor Blow, thank you very much for your time this evening. I'm Nathan Zanton, president of the Zanton Company. We're a small but very active real estate development company based in Portland. We specialize in doing high-quality, professionally managed, mixed-income rental housing. With me today is Kristen Martin, who's our project manager for this project from the Zanton Company. Also Adrian Fine from Teradyne Consultants, who's our civil engineer, and Ted Kelleher from Drummond Woodsum, the law firm of Drummond Woodsum, which has helped us greatly through this project. I'm going to just talk for a minute or so, a minute or two, a very quick overview, and then I'm going to turn it over to Kristen, who's going to narrate some more detail about the specific matters in front of you. This project is 55 one-bedroom units, apartments for households whose head of household is 55 years or more. It targets a diversity of income levels. For example, 42 of the units are set aside for households whose income does not exceed 60% of the area median income. And the other 13 apartments are market rate, offered at market rate for people regardless of their income. And just to give an idea to you or to folks who may be listening at home of what the maximum income would be for the rent restricted and income restricted units, 60% of the median income for a household of one, and that's what most of these households we know from doing our market research would be single person households. That maximum income would be about $42,000 a year. And assets are, in the program that we use at Maine Housing, assets are considered very little in terms of income. So a person could have a couple of $100,000 worth of cash or stocks, and that would only be considered $1,000 or $2,000 of annual income. So it's actually quite flexible in terms of assets. But that would be the maximum income in terms of pension, Social Security, or a job. And then the market rate units, again, are for anyone, regardless of income. We are proposing 60 parking spaces on the site. The site is shown in the image there on the screen. The parking in the foreground of the image where the parking currently exists on the site, at the former Tousignant Funeral Home parking lot, and that equates to 1 unit per apartment plus 5 units, five parking spaces for guests. So one space per apartment plus 5 spaces for guests. The projected rents for the income restricted one-bedroom units are around $1,000 a month, and for the market rate around $1,300 to $1,350 a month. And those rents include hot water, Wi-Fi, a well-equipped fitness room, community room, resident services coordinator, and a parking space. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kristen to get into a little bit more detail about the contract zone and the TIF.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Hi.
Good evening.
So we've switched over to the site plan on the screen. I'll just give a quick reminder of what the site looks like. We purchased 4.67 acres from the Tousignant's property that was formerly the funeral home. And we are proposing to keep our development as close to Portland Avenue as possible. And so we'll only be disturbing just under 2 acres of the site will be disturbed. And that'll leave 3 acres-ish of undisturbed land that will stay exactly as it is right now. Nearly 2 acres of that is wetlands that will never be able to be developed. And then there's a lot of forested area in that back area as well. And so all of that land will stay undisturbed. We'll go to the next one. So I'll just go into a little bit about contract zones and what specifically we're asking for within the contract zone. Old Orchard Beach's zoning has contract zones in it as a way to modify the current zoning in order to fit in projects that are desirable to the town but don't fit within the zoning as it stands right now, and so you're able to modify it. As part of that modification, the town can impose certain restrictions on projects in exchange for those zoning flexibilities, like requiring a percentage of affordable housing, which is what we're proposing for our project. So one of the things that the contract zone zoning language talks about is that a project has to be consistent with the comprehensive plan. So we've looked through Old Orchard Beach's comprehensive plan, and I'll just point out a few things that we've found that sort of fit within our project. The first one talks about providing housing that appeals to a variety of household types and income levels with a special focus on elderly housing. And as Nathan mentioned, our housing is proposed to include affordable housing as well as market rate housing and would be set aside for those elderly households. The second point talks about making sure that growth is kept close to the municipality where there are services already available. And our project is right up the road from here, where the natural gas, water, sewer is all available to the site, and it's very walkable to all the amenities that Old Orchard Beach has. The third bullet talks about protection of wetlands from misuse. These wetlands have been a little bit of a dumping ground for a while, so as part of our project, we will be cleaning up all of the dumping that's happened in the wetland, and we'll be preventing that from happening in the future. We'll be adding additional plantings around the edges of the wetland to further protect them from misuse and any erosion in the future. And then the fourth bullet is just about maintaining the physical condition and keeping properties from being boarded up in the off-season. Our project is proposed as a year-round property. Residents won't be able to access the affordable housing at this project unless it's their primary residence, so they would be full-time residents of Old Orchard Beach and would keep the community vital even in the off-season. So the contract zone is proposing to modify three things about the zoning. The first thing is parking. Under the current zoning, it requires 2 parking spaces per apartment, and we're proposing to reduce that to 1 space per apartment plus 5 guest parking spaces. The reason we feel like this is a reasonable request is, as Nathan mentioned, all the units are going to be 1-bedroom apartments and are likely going to have, the majority of them will have 1 occupant and are unlikely to have multiple vehicles. All the residents are going to be over the age of 55, and we've found in our research that they will even skew even older, that in all likelihood the residents will be in their 70s or older, and a lot of those residents may no longer be driving. I know we have an interest list already, and I just spoke to somebody who lives in Old Orchard Beach now in another rental community, but can't walk to the grocery store and doesn't have a vehicle and relies on someone else to drive them and can only go once every 2 weeks. So she wanted to be on the interest list for this property because she can walk to Landry's if she needs a gallon of milk. It'll be a lot more accessible for her. So I know that that's something we'll see. We do have parking studies that show that in these types of elderly housing projects, the need for parking is not a one-to-one. And I have all that information. If you want me to go into that more, I'm happy to do that. As I mentioned, the building is also really ideally located to all the amenities. Landry's, the post office, the pharmacies, all of those things are very walkable. And then there's a bus stop right on Portland Ave, right outside where the property will be located, which will bring people to even larger amenities. The second item the contract zone is proposing to change is the height. The current zoning limit is 35 feet, and we are proposing to increase that to 42 feet. The reason we need that increase is, if you'll remember from the site plan at the beginning, those wetlands are right behind where the property is being proposed, and they prevent us from creating a larger building with a larger footprint. We have to go up. We need 55 units in order to make this project financially feasible, and so in order to fit those 55 units, we had to go up a 4th story in one section of the building. But we have done a shadow study to make sure that a taller building won't negatively impact the neighbors. And we found that, they study the 4 times of year, and they found that really only during the winter solstice season after 3 p.m. is the only time that the shadow from our proposed building will impact a neighbor's property. That's a time of year where none of us see a whole lot of daylight anyway, so the impact will be very minimal. The third thing the contract zone is looking to change is density. The current zoning requires 5,000 square feet of land per apartment. And we're proposing to reduce that to 1,650 square feet per apartment. As I mentioned, the site is nearly 5 acres large, but when you calculate for density, you have to subtract wetland areas from that calculation, and so what we're allowed to provide is a lot less because of that. So we only have about 2 acres that we can use in our density calculation, which is part of the reason we need it modified. And even though we'll be requesting for a change in the density, we are preserving a large amount of the site with the forest and the wetlands that won't be disturbed. Any questions from the council before?
Good, thank you for that as well. Are there comments from members of the public wishing to speak on this?
I just got one.
Yeah, go ahead. So, go ahead, Mike.
Where are we with the planning part of this now? As far as the planning board goes, how are you making it through the planning process, I guess, Nathan?
And Kristen, why don't you come up in case you want, in case.
And just, you don't have to get in depth,
Okay.
but just
We've been all, thank you for that question. We've gone all the way through the planning board, and the planning board has voted 5-0 to recommend to this council that the contract zone be approved.
Okay, that's really what I wanted to hear.
Okay.
So we do have our site plan and subdivision approval. It's just contingent on a few changes to the site plan, but they have already approved the site plan and subdivision application as well. And that was a vote of 5-0 as well.
Very good. Thank you for that. Yep. That's a good point, Councilor Tusigan. Thank you for mentioning that. So folks, for those viewing at home, this is not the first time this has been before this council. We've had some executive sessions to discuss some of the financing, which is the next public hearing we have, as well as to get an overview of the overall project. So as just mentioned, it's been vetted through the planning board, and it's just pending council action at this point, as the planning board has approved and recommended it to this council. If there are no additional comments or questions from council?
Through the chair.
Go ahead, Councilor Kelly.
I just want to say it was nice to get a letter that is in support of a project, instead of always getting a letter against the project that we're talking about. It was nice to get a letter in support. We just got one from a couple, elderly couple here in town that are looking forward to maybe possibility of moving in there. So it was nice to get that for a change.
Are you aware of the letter? Yeah. They get presented the letter.
And that letter will also be entered into the minutes for the meeting as well. So it's part of the record that we have support from members of the community as well. So if there are no additional comments or questions, we'll close that public hearing at 7:51. And to our last public hearing this evening, public hearing number 4, the financing district. Consider whether to designate the municipal affording housing tax increment financing district to be known as, quote, Milliken Heights Affordable Housing District, unquote, and to adopt a development program for such district related to the property located in the area identified on Town of Orchard Beach tax maps as map 205, block 1, lot 41. And we'll open that public hearing at 7:52. And Mr. Zanton.
Thank you, Chair O'Neill.
Once again.
Since I've given my little overview, I'm going to turn it right over to Kristen to narrate these slides. Thanks.
Hi again. We'll go to the next slide, Adrian. Thank you. So I'm just going to give a brief overview of the TIF. I know we've spoken about it before, but for the benefit of anybody at home. The reason the project is requesting a TIF is because we look to provide a reduced rate affordable rental housing that requires subsidy buy-in from various people, and Maine Housing is one of the entities that we're looking for subsidy for. And one of the ways that the town can sort of provide a subsidy to the program for the affordable housing benefit is through tax increment financing. So we need this TIF in order to close a gap in our financing. We have about $635,000 that we are short in what it would take to build this project, and a TIF would close that gap for us. It allows us to take out an additional mortgage from Maine Housing, and we would use the proceeds of the TIF to pay down that mortgage. So this slide shows a breakdown of the various funding sources that this project would be looking to get. So the total budget on the project is just under $13 million, and 38% of that funding would come from a mortgage from Maine Housing through the low-income housing tax credit program. 26% would come from equity that we raise from selling the tax credits that are received. And then 25% would come from a deferred Maine Housing mortgage. 5% would come from the state CDBG funds that we've worked with the town to be awarded for the project. And then the remaining, that 6%, comes from this TIF. So that's that additional mortgage that we would take out from Maine Housing, and we would use the TIF proceeds to pay that down. So this shows a breakdown of the project specifically. So we did get an original value from the tax assessor, so we've updated that figure, which shows $23,800. And so that shows the original taxes on the property at $367. We are anticipating, estimating the new valuation after construction to be around $5.6 million. That's based on what we've seen for our projects in other municipalities. So in looking at the new taxes, applying the mill rate to that anticipated value, the new taxes would be $87,431. And so with the TIF, we're only looking at the incremental increase in taxes. So that $367 would continue to go to the town just like it always has, and it would only be the difference that would be worked into the TIF. We are proposing an 80% TIF for 15 years, and that is what we've come to from working with the council. I know that it was your interest to keep the TIF as short as possible, and so this was the way to close that gap. It's the same gap we were proposing to close before. It's just restructuring the payment method to pay it down faster. So for the 80% increment, the project would receive just over $69,000 back in taxes to pay that mortgage down, and the town would receive just under $18,000 in property taxes. So one thing with the TIF is it does help with the tax shift benefit. So when you don't have a TIF and there's an increased tax revenue on a property, you lose a lot of that taxes to the county taxes that get increased and to the decrease in what you get from the state revenue sharing. And so by putting a TIF on the property, you shield that increase in taxes from those. And so the town would be saving just over $2,000 in county taxes that would not increase, and it would save nearly $2,500 in state revenue sharing. So there's an additional $4,717 that gets saved by putting a TIF on top of the project. So for us, the TIF accomplishes, very simply, it makes the project feasible. It closes a financial gap that we wouldn't be able to close otherwise. And in exchange for that, we help fill a need in Old Orchard Beach by providing high quality, year-round, mixed income rental housing. It also increases the value of the land. It'll add $17,000 annually to the city coffers for the first 15 years, and then once the TIF ends, in year 16, the town of Old Orchard Beach gets all of those taxes, and so it would see an increase of, it would see the full $87,000 in taxes. It brings 55 new year-round households to Old Orchard Beach. Each one is a little economic engine. Those people spend their money and time in Old Orchard Beach and would add to that the economy and the community in Old Orchard Beach. Any questions?
Excellent.
Thank you.
Very good, thank you once again. Good. Any additional public comment? Comments or questions from council? Council, if I may, I just indulge for just a moment, just to backtrack a little bit. We've met a couple of times in executive session, and this truly has been a collaborative effort to move this forward through the negotiation process between, because the original request was for 75% as opposed to the 80% for 30 years. Council struggled with that a little bit, and through strong negotiations and that collaborative effort, we were able to negotiate that time frame, cut it in half for only an additional 5% increase for the requested original amount. So it was well done. We thank you for your professionalism, your time, because we've met several times, and it's through the town manager, town staff, council. We've come to this final proposal for you folks, which we believe to be in the best interest of the town. So we thank you for that, and I want to thank council for their time and efforts as well, because it was a daunting task as always to talk about money. So for us to agree and move things forward, it was a plus. So thank you for both sides. With that being said, we'll close that public hearing at 7:58. Thank you for your time this evening, folks. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I just want to also acknowledge Larry Mead and thank Larry for how helpful he's been in kind of facilitating the conversation between us and the council.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you very much. Next on our agenda, public hearing, business licenses and approval. Jeff and Laura Favreau Properties, 207-214, 10 Forest Avenue, 1 year-round rental, and 104-214, 1102, 135 Portland Avenue, number 1102, 1 year-round rental. Alex Bachman, 305-6111, 66 East Green Avenue, Unit 1, 1 year-round rental, and 305-6112, 6